Thursday on Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand. Glad to be back for another day. Hope you guys are having a great day out there today. Getting my bearings a little bit more. Second day of sleeping in my own bed after the trip to London. Kind of feeling like myself today. So, it's always nice. I love the trip. Great travel, but I love traveling all the time. But always also nice to get home, have the familiar comforts. So that's the energy I'm bringing into today's show. A good one at that. Sarah McLellan joins me here in a little bit. The Wild open the season tonight. Doesn't feel like it should be true because it's going to be like 82 degrees today. But yes, NHL hockey, Minnesota Wild tonight against Columbus. Dean Evison, by the way, the head coach of the Columbus Blue Jackets now, so that'll be a familiar face on the other side of the glass. So Sarah and I will just get into the whole kind of complexity of this season, what's at stake, one more year of costly penalties for the Ryan Suter, Zach Parise buyouts. Not a lot of new faces on the roster, but maybe some important ones. Some young players may be expected to contribute this season. She and I will get into the entirety of that here in just a little bit. The Jets, New York Jets, made a pretty significant move, firing Robert Saleh not long after the Vikings beat them in London. I want to talk about that for just a minute because it's an interesting kind of story and the dynamics at play with star quarterback Aaron Rodgers and how that might all fit together. First, though, what I miss, Lynx tonight. WNBA Finals, a tight turnaround. I was surprised. I wasn't, I didn't see all of the Tuesday night game. I was still traveling a little bit. The Game 5 win. I had assumed that Game 1 would be Friday after just kind of like imagining how the series would go. Instead, here we are, Game 1 tonight in New York, 48 hours after the Lynx clinch their spot in the WNBA Finals. New York hasn't played since Sunday. They knocked off the Las Vegas Aces in 4 games, winning that Game 4 in Las Vegas, giving themselves a little bit more rest. Lynx beat New York 3 out of 4 times this season, including in that kind of mid-season Commissioner's Cup tournament. New York kind of sounding, though, like maybe they still feel like they have an edge in this series. They were the number 1 seed. They had the best record all year. Kind of doing the thing where they're like, yeah, they beat us, but. So this is All-Star Sabrina Ionescu saying, we got a little complacent in a few of those games. Players coming in and out in our season hasn't been its easiest in terms of continuity. Now we've been able to peak at the right time in terms of understanding what we need to do to win, how we need to stay hungry. If a team is taking one thing away, how do we combat that with different options? We're in a different place where we've been doing that really well. So I think they're kind of thinking, hey, the Lynx won those games, but they don't. I think their head coach said they don't think they were at their best in those games. Lynx will do that to you, though, right? The Lynx will do that to you. They will spread you out. They will make you work for everything on offense. They will make it difficult to defend one thing on defense. That, I don't know. I don't. If I'm the Lynx, I might go into this series with a little bit of a chip on my shoulder. I wouldn't like when the other team was saying, "Yeah, you beat us," but I don't think we were at our best in those games. Maybe that's the confidence that New York has to try to puff out their chests with in terms of, trying to regain an edge after you lose 3 out of 4 during a season series. Yeah, I get players are in and out of the lineup, but it does feel to me that the Lynx should have a lot of confidence going in, even if they are the prohibitive underdogs. Like I said on yesterday's show, if you look at the betting odds, the numbers there, basically giving New York a 70% chance to win this series. Home court's big. New York obviously had a great regular season. So did the Lynx. So I'm excited for this. I think this is going to be a really good series. I think you heard Connecticut coach Stephanie White saying she thinks this is going to go the distance. To win, the Lynx are going to have to kind of do what they've done all year. I don't think there's any kind of like new magic formula for them in the postseason. It's kind of more of the same. Play around Nafisa Collier, her all-around excellence, share the ball, make your shots, defend well. It's not like some sort of reinvention of the wheel. It's just doing simple basketball things and some complicated basketball things really well on a consistent basis. That's what they've done pretty much the whole season. They can't afford any slip-ups. So the thing is, they can't afford to have nights off, bad games, stretches, because obviously New York is just too good for that. They're going to have to be as sharp as they've been all year, but I would not put it past them to be sharp enough in 3 of these 5 games to take this series. Let's stay in New York for a drama that has some adjacency to Minnesota. Jets fired head coach Robert Saleh earlier this week, and Aaron Rodgers, star quarterback, getting asked if he played a role in it, talking on the Pat McAfee show, saying, "As far as any of the ridiculous allegations out there, I'm not going to spend more than 1 sentence in response to it. And that is that I resent any of those accusations because they are patently false." It's interesting, the amount of power that people think I have, which I don't. I love Robert. Aaron, people think you have power because you do. You handpicked a whole bunch of players to come in. You got your old offensive coordinator, Nathaniel Hackett, to come in. More on him in a minute. The Jets have basically arranged their entire lives around you. Hurt last year on the 4th play of the season. Back this year trying to win at age 40, almost age 41. 2-3 right now. Things aren't going great. And here is the key thing from an ESPN story. Before he got fired, Saleh was preparing to demote Hackett, a source said, a decision that may have chafed Rodgers. He wasn't asked about that Wednesday. Rodgers gave no indication of any friction or disagreements in their relationship. Okay, so here's the thing, and we do know that Aaron Rodgers had a phone conversation Monday with the Jets owner Woody Johnson. So if you connect the dots, connect all these dots, I think that Robert Saleh took the fall for all this, that Aaron Rodgers didn't, in fact, love his head coach. I don't know if he got him fired, but I think working behind the scenes, you can connect some of the dots and imagine how this all unfolded. That Aaron Rodgers has enough power, despite his own protests, has enough power. Players do these days. You see players getting coaches fired all the time. Wouldn't surprise me if that was an element of this, at least, and not just the underachieving the Jets have done so far this year. Yeah, you can make a case based on the Jets' record during Saleh's tenure. He was 4-13 his first year, 7-10 the last couple of years. They haven't progressed the way they thought they would, but the offense has been the problem. He's a defensive coach. The defense has been great, so I don't really know what they're gaining here, other than maybe, just maybe, making their star aging quarterback happy. A change for the sake of change. It's a fascinating drama out of New York, and I do love that the Vikings win over the Jets in London on Sunday was the final straw in all of this. It's Wild season already. I don't know if you guys can believe it. I barely can. Sarah McLellan, can you believe it?
It's already here.
Yep. Here we go. Another year. Year, how many on the beat for you right now?
Almost 7 years now.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. That's amazing. That means you've never seen a Wild playoff series victory. The Wild haven't had one in about a decade. I don't know if it's going to come this year, Sarah, but we're going to talk about the season ahead. They opened Thursday night here against Columbus. I don't even know if it's a sellout. Which kind of gets into a little bit of kind of what's at stake this year, which is, a lot of, it's kind of been a status quo for a while, and I think people are maybe looking for a little bit more, but it's going to be hard to get there because of some of what they're still dealing with salary cap wise from the Suter and Parisi buyouts.
Yeah, I think it'd be very easy to just look ahead, right? To look to next season and just kind of maybe want to hit the fast forward button to next season, because obviously those buyouts, the charges are going to drop significantly. So, they should be able to retool their roster a little bit more, next summer in free agency, or just kind of, make more change than, we really saw this summer with their turnover. So I think it'd be easy just to, maybe kind of shrug your shoulders, so to speak, at this season. But I don't know if that's the right approach, though, because obviously there's still so much at stake in the meantime. And I just don't think that's how this franchise has been wired. We've continually through the years, no matter the state of the roster, no matter the experience level, the average age, we've heard this is a team that expects to be a playoff team. And we've heard, owner Craig Leopold continually say, this is a team that he expects to win. It's a team that's continually spent, up to the salary cap limit. So there's all this action, obviously, that, endorses this team being competitive, making strides on the ice, and ultimately, getting on that long playoff run. So there's that at play, but two, just where they're at in their life cycle with Kirill Kaprizov, how big this season could be for his future potentially, getting young players integrated into the roster, more of that progression. But you're right. This is a team that wasn't in the playoffs last season, didn't make a lot of changes, and is in a very tough division in hockey. So it begs the question, whose spot are they going to take to get back into that playoff picture, and what needs to happen? In some sense, it's kind of clear, the opposite of last season. Right. There's some bullet points to build off of, get off to a good start, try to stay healthy, have some players have some bounce back seasons. But it's going to be interesting because there is this light at the end of the tunnel, but I don't think that minimizes the importance of what happens in the meantime for the team this season.
Well, especially because the franchise player, the guy you wrote about recently, Kirill Kaprizov, I think that was online Wednesday, probably in your Star Tribune on Thursday here in advance of the opener. He's got 2 years left on his contract. And, the start of your story is basically like, hey, don't worry about it too much. Like, he's here for at least 2 more years, or, his contract here is at least for 2 more years. But there does seem to be a little bit of future urgency, at least. Like, this is an important year, or could be an important year for convincing him to stay long-term. He's never won a playoff series. He's been in the playoffs and, gotten close. They've had some good regular seasons, but you don't want to have another year of missing the playoffs going into kind of the make or break off season where it's either extend him or you might have to think about trading him.
I get the fascination about what he's going to do. It makes sense. He's this franchise player. He's the superstar, and they've obviously clearly identified him as key to whatever plan and success this team is to have moving forward. But as he said, he's focused on the season, playing hockey right now, this next season. He still has 2 more years on this contract. But it makes sense why there's curiosity about what he's going to do. And I think it was interesting, too, in working on that story, to hear from him just kind of how he processes winning and success and what's important to him. And already, even though, like you mentioned, he hasn't had that playoff success here with the Wild, he's had it before in his life. And to hear him discuss, what it takes, to go on these long playoff runs, what it's like to keep playing hockey rather than going to the beach or the ocean,
right.
What it takes, and kind of the mental switch that he made, even still when he was, younger in his professional career. I think he really showed like who he is and what's important to him. And, he could recall all of these goals he scored in his career. And, he knows for the team to have success, he has to be good. But he's still very much about the team and putting winning over any sort of, it feels like, personal accolade. So I think, we don't know the answer to this question right now, but I think it was really interesting to see just still how he thinks, how he processes the game, how aware he is of his career, what he's building here. And he is key. He is very key to this franchise. So there's always going to be that, that curiosity, as I said, obviously going back to Marian Gaborik, probably the last time really this team was at that type of crossroads, facing that type of crossroads. There's some muscle memory there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
yes.
It triggers that. But, this season, I still think he's here now. Let's see how it plays out. You can look at the roster, you can look at the turnover, but with a player of that caliber, there's always that what if, who knows what can happen. It looks like obviously he's going to start reunited with Matt Zuccarello. That chemistry really headlined each's best season with this team, and when the Wild had, their most success over the last handful of years. So it's going to be interesting to see how key he can be, that line can be, in preventing last season from, happening again.
Well, and all those things you said reaffirm why he is the franchise player, not just scoring goals, but he's the kind of guy you do want to build around, and they have built around. And you're right. We do have to see how this season plays out. Like, we kind of know at this point what you're going to get from Kirill Kaprizov. What probably is the X factor is less about what he does and more about what everybody else does this season, right? The kind of the supporting role players, even the kind of like next level stars, guys like Matt Boldy, guys like Brock Faber, things like that. Like, they have to maybe take another step, and they maybe have to have some of those supporting guys like Foligno, Hartman, have the kinds of seasons that they need them to have in order to compete for a playoff spot and not be kind of in that, zone where they're kind of competitive, but probably not going to make it.
Yeah, I think the pressure and the responsibility is really on these returning players because, there wasn't this huge offseason makeover. There wasn't, multiple free agent signings. There's not this new wave of players coming to the rescue. It's this team. Most of these players are signed to long-term deals. They've solidified this core. So if someone's going to turn it around, it obviously starts with that group. There's a number of players that could have or are poised to have that type of bounce back season to get back to the level, they were at a few years ago. Another thing too is health, obviously. Jared Spurgeon's back. You mentioned Marcus Foligno, both had season ending surgeries last season, and their absences were felt obviously and reflected in some of the results. So, there's all these kind of factors, and you can point to, what if this happens? What if this happens? We'll see how it shakes out. But at the least, I feel like that shows that there are ways for this team to get better, right? If they can stay healthier, if they can get off to a better start and not be chasing early, like what type of measurable growth is that? The other point too, like we referenced already, they can be better, but does that equal a playoff berth?
Yeah.
You're still getting graded against the scale of this rigorous Central Division and a very tough Western Conference. So does it just start with that? Is it baby steps? Is it this team getting off to a good start, finding a group with this lineup, rolling out this lineup as designed, so it can try to reach its potential? But does that, translate to a boost up the standings? We'll see. But I think that's the first kind of tangible step in the right direction that needs to happen.
I can't help but notice that they have too many goalies. How are they going to solve this? Because Wallstead seems like if he's not 100% ready, he feels like he should be ready some point this season. You've still got Marc-Andre Fleury, who I thought we wrote all the goodbye Marc-Andre Fleury stories last year, and now he's back again. And then obviously the Gus bust. So how does this sort itself out? It feels like one too many.
Feels kind of like a starting rotation in baseball, right? Like it's the Twins bullpen or something.
Something. Except you can never have too many starting pitchers. I think you can potentially have too many goalies if they all want to play. And I don't sense. I don't know. You would know better than I would. Do you sense any tension, or goalies want to play, and there's not enough starts for all of them to go around at this point?
I think it's going to be a flexible situation because obviously, as we mentioned about all these factors and what ifs and what's going to happen, some of that could also affect, this rotation or this tandem and how it looks. Obviously, Jesper Wallstedt is here to start the season, but how long does he stay? And after how many games potentially can he get in before maybe they need to do some roster juggling? As much as we talk about buyouts and the cap hits and all that, that still is very much a factor in this because they may need to create, cap space at some point if they have an injury at another position and they need to make a call up and they don't have enough money to do so salary cap wise, that they may just have to send him down, even if he does not merit it or he's played well. Like they might have to do some juggling to address if there's other issues or needs in their lineup. I think too, you could see a situation where depending on the schedule, if they have a lull and they have a break and they're not playing and they're just practicing for a handful of days, but Iowa has a few games, maybe it makes sense for him to go down and get those game reps in. Whereas, maybe up here, he'd only had one game or one start, in a week or so. So I think it's probably going to be a very fluid situation. Having said that, though, you're right. Goalies want to play. It's a different dynamic. Even on the practice ice, you can notice when there's only two nets and, someone has to stand off on the sideline. So I think too, though, at some point we probably get more into a situation where someone's winning and someone's on a roll, it's clear that that's going to be the person that's tasked with manning the crease during that time. Can they get to that position? Can they get to that point where someone kind of seizes control? We'll see. Obviously, their goaltending was up and down last season. It wasn't kind of that stable factor that had been in the past. So again, some opportunity for whether it's Marc-Andre Fleury, Philip Gustafson, somebody to kind of steady the crease there. But that's going to be the test and the challenge. And then what a good problem to have for the Wild then if they have three, goalies that are really vying and merit opportunity and merit starts. I think the bigger picture, though, this obviously endorses Wallstead and his future here. He also received a contract extension recently.
Right.
So for him to even just get more than the 3 games that he got last season, I think they've just pinpointed that that's going to be key for his development. And if he deserves it and he plays well and they're winning on his watch, then it would make sense to keep finding a way to keep him involved and keep him in the mix. So it looks a little crowded. It's not typical. It's not traditionally the way that NHL teams, handle their goaltending, but it kind of speaks to the crossroads they're at with Marc-Andre Fleury, this being his last season before he retires. Obviously, Gustafson is under contract, and then the future of the net, obviously, with Wallstead and where he's at, just needing more development to get to that, full-time NHL role.
The only way it could get really interesting, I guess, is if Wallstead got on an early roll, right? Like if somehow, like his first game, he, has a great game, and they're like, okay, we should give him another game. Then he has another really good game. Like if he's the one that shows he's ready to be the number one, then you don't need 2 veteran backups. So I guess that would be the way that it would get. That would be the only way it could get really complicated during the regular season.
My question, though, too, with that is, will the schedule allow that? Because
Sure.
they play a lot of games early and they're a lot on the road. So I wonder how then, if just how busy it is, it kind of sets itself up to be kind of a split between, you could see how they could rotate 3 in early.
Okay.
So maybe if that situation pans out with Wallstead, maybe that doesn't happen until the end of November, December, later in the season, right? Potentially. Because right now I wonder if they would be mindful of workload and working everybody in with 3 and 4 and back-to-backs. It's a really fair point and question, and I wonder how they're going to handle that because, it is busy. They do want to get off to a good start. You sense that urgency at camp from them. So does that mean maybe straying from some type of schedule, maybe that they've figured out makes sense? But also balancing that with the rigors of the travel and how busy the schedule is. It's really interesting. It's going to be fascinating to watch.
Couple more things. One, we know there's not a lot of newcomers, but like who are either, young players or the relatively small number of signees they had that could make a difference in this lineup this year?
I think based on what we saw in camp and preseason, I think Jacob Lauko is someone who could come in and really seize the opportunity he's getting with a fresh start. He's playing on the 4th line, but I don't think that, diminishes the impact that he could have for this team. He really seems to fit that role. But he's getting a fresh start after playing in Boston and playing for that organization. I think to come here, he really kind of checks all the boxes on the areas that, the Wild were looking to improve. PK aside, because obviously penalty kill was a big eyesore last season, but just the energy, the tenaciousness on shift to shift, being tough to play against. And he's really showed a really sharp shot so far in camp and through preseason with the goals he's been able to score. And I know talking to him, that's important for him to show more of that production and chip in offense. And really, that's also another need for the Wild, right? One of the reasons that they struggled last season was they just didn't have depth scoring. It was a very top-heavy lineup. So if they can get him to come in on the 4th line and just turn in, hard, heavy shifts, be somebody who can be a handful in the offensive zone and just let them eat up offensive zone time. I think that will be big for the team. And another player of that same kind of style was their other offseason addition in Yakov Trenin. He's obviously someone who has that history with the PK, being someone who's, strong on the penalty kill. with him, it's kind of like takeaways and kind of forcing people into mistakes and picking pucks off other players' stick. That really seems to be something that's been in his game, in his career. But again, just kind of that hard to play against, relentless shifts. I think too, we think about, okay, well, how many goals they gave up last season and the PK and the goaltending. I think part of the way to alleviate that or fix that is just play less defense, play more offense. That seems to be a big priority for this team, is just turning in quality shifts in front of the opposition's net and keeping that shift there. And I talked to Trenton recently, and I kind of asked him, what does a good shift look like? Like, what's a shift for you that you feel you did your job? And it's just that. It's just getting in on the forecheck, keeping the puck in, swinging it to the point, getting a shot, but hemming the opposition in there so that the next line can come in and pick up where they left off and just build their game that way. And so, they weren't, like we said, they didn't make a lot of changes, but the changes they did really addressed some of the big issues from last season. Now we'll see if that's enough for this team to really progress this season.
I saw all the beat writers had a session. I think it was a group session with owner Craig Leopold recently. What's your sense of where he's at with, obviously the business seems like it's in pretty good shape. Franchise values are going up. But, like I said, I think maybe single game tickets could be a little bit of an issue this year, especially if they don't get off to a good start. What was your big takeaway from talking to Craig Leopold, the owner?
Well, he very much, I think has that focus on the future. He talked about, going into free agency already next summer, the money that the team will have to spend, and the fact that they've already identified a few players that if those players reach free agency, these are who they would like to bring in, for the season, now that they'll have a little bit more flexibility with their budget. But having said that, I think it doesn't diminish the importance of the season in the meantime, and the expectations for this team to still build and grow, and get to a point where they show free agents, Kirill Kaprizov, their fans, that they can win. And, for a long stretch there, even though it didn't translate into playoff success, you could always say that about the Wild. They were in the playoffs. They were competitive. They were a tough team to play against. And obviously that changed last season. So I think he kind of has that near sight vision, but also he called it, it'll be like Christmas for the team next summer to go into free agency and finally spend a little more money than they obviously have in the past, obviously knowing what the buyout situation has been and how hefty that price tag has been. But that seems to be it still, just, the focus on winning, the focus on Kaprizov, and showing and proving to him that, they can win here. That seems to be probably pretty much for what the fan base and, everyone is kind of focusing on too. He seemed to really understand that and kind of where people probably are at with the Wild and how they feel about them.
Well, yeah, I think maybe we both saw the same ad. I saw something, I think it was on X, social media, is like buy tickets for the opener. It was just the other day. So I'll be curious to see what the crowd is like on Thursday night, if it's a sellout, what they're, if they win, lose, what's the mood in the room, as we say. What's the mood going to be in the room?
Especially the start of the season. They only have these 2 home games, and then they play 7 in a row on the road. Yep. And it really is a runway for them to distance themselves from last season and really show that they can kind of turn the page on, they kind of had slow starts, last season, maybe the season before. Have they really started to kind of make the strides necessary to show that last season was a fluke? It was a one-off. It wasn't who they are. Maybe just stir some optimism and some encouragement, because like we've talked about, this is pretty much the same team. We know this team, we know this core. They're here now. They're signed for multiple years. So if it's going to change, it's gonna be up to them.
Well, it starts Thursday night. Sarah McLellan will be there. Appreciate your time today, Sarah. I'm sure we'll talk soon, and we'll talk to you later.
Sounds good. Take care.
Watch your dreams and savings grow with Royal Credit Union's 4.25% annual percentage yield 12-month certificate. Open now at any Royal office or online at rcu.org/certificate saver. Early withdrawal penalties could reduce earnings and principal. APY accurate as of 2/1/25. Insured by NCUA.
Postscript to my conversation with Sarah. Read a report in The Athletic, exclusive interview with Craig Leopold. Sounds like it probably happened on the same night of the group access that Sarah and I were talking about. The Wild have revealed a master 5-year plan. Apparently they're in year 2 now. This is year 2 of a 5-year plan with Craig Leopold and Bill Guerin to win a championship, to bring a Stanley Cup to the Wild. Year 2 of a 5-year plan, but this is year 24, 25 for the Wild. This is year 6 now for Bill Guerin, but we're in year 2 of a 5-year plan. Something doesn't add up here. So here are the elements, according to the Athletic story, of this master plan. I'm not casting aspersions on this story. It's a perfectly good story, but the story says the team must re-sign superstar Kirill Kaprizov, who is eligible for an extension after this season. The team's current core and rising stars like Matt Boldy and Brock Faber must thrive. The team's top prospects like Jesper Wallstedt and Danilo Yurov must arrive and be impactful. And next summer, when the Wild have some cap space, they need to hit on a few difference-making free agents. This is the master plan? This is what everybody in the history of sports has tried to do. This is not a plan. This is what everybody tries to do, what the Wild have been trying to do for a quarter century with very mixed, limited success. You want your superstars to play well. You want your young players to get better. You want your prospects to develop into good players, and you want to be shrewd when you have free agent money. This is not some sort of secret. This is not a master plan. This is ridiculous. This is not year 2 of some kind of master plan. This is hope. This is hope that you can have a good season this year to convince Kirill Kaprizov to stay, that your good players keep getting better, that maybe you can hit on a couple free agents next year. Like, this is not rocket science. This is not a plan. This is what they've been trying to do forever. So anyway, sorry, I'm a little bit... This article kind of set me off. It does not feel like there's any sort of grand scheme over there. I don't understand why this is the very first time in franchise history, or at least during the Leopold tenure, that there has been a 5-year plan. I don't really get what they're doing over there aside from what everybody else's basic framework of a plan here. They have a framework of a plan. They have the, whatever we want to call it. I don't know. I don't know what to think of it, other than this is a key season in all of this, because if Kaprizov isn't happy at the end of this season and he forces his way out, again, not saying that's going to happen, Sarah's insights into what makes him tick suggest that he could very well stay here, even if he's not, even if they're not on a clear path after this season. If he sees the pieces falling into place, he could sign an extension and they could kind of see this start to come together. But this is not a master plan. This is exactly what everybody tries to do. This is what I could have told you in 2 minutes that the Wild should be trying to do. Like, this is the very, very baseline plan, the framework of a plan that anybody hopes to ever have. So I don't know. It kind of set me off when I read it, and I had to share that. I had to vent a little bit because going into this season, the Wild, I don't know if there's reasons for optimism right now. I don't know what you should think about this season, but the big picture for this franchise, it's the same as it has ever always been. That will do it for me today. Lavelle E. Neal III, Star Tribune columnist, expected to join me on Friday's show a day later than usual for our daily delivery debate segment. Push that back because of the Wild preview show today. I'm sure we'll get into probably some Twin stuff with the TV stuff, maybe some Viking stuff. Probably have to stay away from the Lynx just because of the timing of the series, but we'll get into a whole bunch of good topics with Lavelle on Friday. If you missed the special episode with Chip Scoggins that went live yesterday afternoon, go circle back and check that one out. That was a fun one, talking about his great series on a whole bunch of Minnesota pro star athletes and how they prepare on game day. That was a fun one with Chip. Great series. Go read that. Go listen to the podcast episode. Tons of fun with that one. Depending on what happens tonight, I might have a special episode or something on social media at the very least. Depending on what happens in the Lynx game tonight, could be a busy day, busy night for me. We'll see how that game goes. Maybe slip some Wild stuff in there as well. Lots to get to, like I said, tomorrow. Wild, Lynx, everything else, and Lavelle as well. So stick around for that. Have a great rest of your Thursday. Back at it again in a little while.